Hello and welcome to a video regarding the RAISE Act and why it failed. Now, if you want to know what the RAISE Act is, it is essentially something about limiting legal immigration by about half. Not through a solid number necessarily, but it is necessarily through cutting it in half by limiting the amount of green cards they are going to give out, by putting a cap on refugees coming to the country, asylees, etc. And it would only make sense that they turn to a merit-based immigration system rather than necessarily a lottery-based visa program, which is shut down effectively with that type of legislation introduced as the RAISE Act in 2017. This had the endorsement of particularly President Trump. You have Stephen Miller, who is an immigration hawk. You have a senior advisor for policy and for Trump, actually, who's Jewish, by the way. Fun fact. Steve Bannon is in there as well, and he helped shape the bill because Steve Bannon, early on in the administration, particularly in 2017, was a very notable importance in pushing Donald Trump to a more nationalistic stance on everything. Now, the provisions in this bill are very important, as they would limit the amount of green cards from over 1 million to about 500,000. It would also remove pathways for siblings and adult children of U.S. citizens to apply for permanent lawful residence. So it would limit the amount of U.S. citizens using their relatives to then get citizenship for themselves. So that would pretty much damper and help end chain migration as well. It would also put a cap of 50,000 refugees admissions a year, and it would also end the visa diversity lottery, which has no constitutional basis to begin with. And so in promoting this bill, the Trump administration said it would increase the economic growth of the country and increase wages, which is facetious maybe, because it is really replacing a lot of these immigrants that are poor with merit-based. So you'd be importing a ton of Indians and Filipinos with STEM degrees. So yes, it would increase GDP nominally, but it depends on what sector. And in particular, it would help wages for the lower, but dampen the ones in the middle class, disproportionately so. The contention was still challenged with the economists, as it provided the cuts in immigration that may have actually hurt growth, according to 1,400 economists. So the Cato Institute even contradicted this as well. So all these libertarian think tanks really went against it as well. He was opposed, of course. Tom Cotton was opposed from the DNC under Tom Perez, that it would tear apart immigrant communities. People were calling this nativistic. Not necessarily racist, but very nativistic. Marco Rubio didn't support it. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus and other immigrant rights groups called it cruel and un-American, which is just very ironic. But realistically speaking, I can go over what is in this point system, and it is merit-based. It is very similar to what Australia and Canada have in terms of immigration, and their immigration system has problems, but I think it is superior to ours. So for example, there is a cap of 140,000 for each fiscal year of immigrant visas through this point system. So you get certain points. If you're, for example, if you're between 0 and 17, you cannot submit an application to come to the U.S. Without another sponsor, because you're of no economic utility to the United States, probably. Between 18 and 21, you get 6 points. 22 to 25, you get 8 points. 26 to 30, you get 10 points, and it goes down from there. So if you're 51 or older, you lose all your points as well. So what we're seeing is that we want, particularly under this Cotton-Purdue bill, men in their late 20s to early 30s, particularly, to boost GDP and help the economy, while not using welfare or anything like that, which is a step up from the lower class immigration, in which we are responsible for $115 billion a year in welfare benefits to illegal immigrant families that are disproportionately unskilled and low wage. Also, you do get a point system up to 13, really, depending on your degree. So if you have a high school degree, you get 1 point. If you get a bachelor's degree, you get 6. If you get a foreign equivalent of education, it is a little bit less of a pointage. So, for example, it's a 1 point difference, really. A U.S. professional doctorate in STEM, for example, gives you a 13 points instead of a high school one, which only gives you 1. Just as an example. All right. When you go to the English language proficiency, this is a very troubling one, and this is where you can get into the racism, so-called. It rates things in deciles, which is very, I don't even know what that is, but I presume that it is exactly a distribution value in which somebody that reads an interview with you, or hears one, really, gives you a point in terms of how well you do. And if you get into the 10th decile, you get 12 points, and if you're between the first and the 5th, you only get 0 points, right? So it helps get people with broken English out of contention necessarily. You also get a 40-point maximum point allocation if you have an extraordinary achievement, whether that be a Nobel laureate or comparable recognition, or an individual Olympic medal, or first place in an international sporting event. So this is a very niche case. This is a very insignificant amount. Also, there's a point allocation in terms of if you're getting highly compensated for your employment. So you get 5 points if your annual salary is 150% less, but it's at least 150%, but less than 200% of the median household income in the state of employment. So it basically gives you more points the more money you make, because it makes you more likely to contribute more to the economy if you get that job. You get point allocations up to 12 if you invest in the United States. You get 12 points if you invest $1.8 million for at least 3 years in America. So if you give money, that's another good qualifier for a merit-based immigration. And then there is 2 points if you have a valid pre-existing offer of admission under family preference. So that's if you can get aligned with your family as well. So seeing this, it is very poignant that if you get enough points, and if you're a qualified American wannabe, that you can enjoy the privilege of becoming a resident and then a citizen in the best country in the earth, which is the United States. So if you're the right age, if you got the right degree, if you're good at English, if you have a good accomplishment, if you make a good income proposal over there, or if you already have money and want to invest it, and if you have a family in America, then you can most definitely come here. Right? So it's very cool, very obviously a decent idea. It is a good first step into limiting immigration. And it only makes sense through an even economic sense that this is to really, really bolster the GDP, which is great for solvency reasons, etc. Not in the same way that the poor, farm laborers get to do. Now, a problem with this bill necessarily was that while this was proposed, it was shot down in committee apparently, and then there was another bill that did actually get a vote in the Senate, yet it only got 39 Republican votes against 60-ish votes in the opposition, and that would include Lindsey Graham, who voted against it. I believe also Marco Rubio was against it, and it just goes to show, you know who your enemies are. When you look up the RAISE Act and who voted for it, you could see exactly who voted for the RAISE Act on the internet, and you would notice who's America First and who isn't. This isn't even the most punishing immigration bill proposed, actually. In 1998, there was a more restrictionist immigration approach, and yet even then, it didn't get the votes. This one was easier and didn't get the votes. It is very pessimistic to look at this and then say that we can get a reasonable immigration moratorium through the Senate. It just doesn't work. Nobody's going to vote for it. We see in just a halving of the legal immigration and a huge, even bipartisan, I would say, boost, really, to our GDP, and yet people strike it down. And Tom Cotton's a reasonable man. He's a smart guy. He's really tall, and clearly it just doesn't work. So if you're going to do something that's immigration restrictionist, maybe look to not the Congress, but the executive, because clearly the Congress won't move on this, and it's a complete deadlock. And even a completely milquetoast conceding and giveaway to the Democrats under the Schumer-Rubio Gang of Eight proposition bill in 2013 couldn't have worked. So how could this work? And to you people that are America First saying, we can get this done. No, you fucking can't. You really can't. It's not possible, guys. I'm sorry. Thanks for watching. Bye.